Mindset, a daily dose of practical wit and wisdom with a professional educator and trainer, Amazon best-selling author, United States Marine, television and radio host, Paul G. Markel. Each episode will focus on positive and productive ways to strengthen your mindset and help you improve your relationships, career goals, and overall well-being. Please welcome your host, Paul G. Markel.
Hello and welcome back to Morning Mindset. I am your host, Paul Markel. Thank you once again for taking the opportunity to learn, to consider something positive and productive and maybe a new way of looking at things. Now, the title for today's episode may seem a little strange to you. It's definitely different than the norm. It's called Tourniquet Solutions. Why do people embrace half solutions or half answers? I'll give you a fantastic example. After the attacks of 9/11, people were panicking and they were, justifiably concerned. And we had Islamic terrorists who took over airplanes, murdered the pilots, and crashed the planes into buildings, killing thousands and thousands of people. And so as a nation, we said, what are we going to do? What can we possibly do to prevent this or to stop an attack once it starts? What can we do? And the supposed experts came up with all kinds of answers or half solutions. They said, well, we can armor the cockpit doors. We're going to armor the cockpit doors so they can't be broken into. So they'll be like little mini safes. And then someone said, yeah, but what happens when the terrorist takes over the plane, or he grabs the stewardess and he holds a knife to her throat and he tells the pilots inside, if you don't open the door, I'm going to kill this flight attendant or what have you. Is the person inside going to open the door? And they suggested, well, perhaps we can arm the flight attendants with tasers. And everyone's like, yeah, that's a great idea. We'll teach him how to use tasers. And then someone said, yeah, but a knife attack is a deadly force attack. And a taser is for less than lethal. So that's not a great idea. Now, that was just one. That was just one example. We often see we have a problem, a very, very serious problem. But rather than face it head on with hard solutions or come up with hard answers to hard problems, what we gravitate towards is half solutions or half answers. The reason I chose the Tourniquet Solutions is because one of the things that I do as a profession is I teach traumatic first aid training. I started teaching it when I was working as a military contractor. Started teaching young 18, 19, 20-year-old troopers how to save their buddy's life, how to stopgap a life-threatening wound while they're waiting for the professionals to arrive. Because sometimes if you just lay there and wait for the professionals to arrive, the person, the patient, the victim, they're going to be dead before the paramedics or the doctors or the EMTs or whatever can show up, before the corpsman gets there. And so what do we teach our young troopers today? We teach them hard solutions. And a tourniquet is a hard solution because it requires a commitment. Now, many people will dance around the tourniquet. If you've gone through an American Red Cross family first aid training, or if you've gone through Boy Scout training, or if you've gone through any modern training, for a heavy wound, a heavy bleed, there's probably all kinds of things that you've been taught to do. You've been taught to elevate the limb, to apply direct pressure to the wound, to apply pressure to a pressure point, and then as a last resort, after all other means have failed, that's the verbiage that they used in just about every first aid course for the last 50 years. As a last resort, after all other means have failed, then and only then should you apply a tourniquet. Well, here's the problem with that. If somebody literally really, really has an open wound on their arm or their leg, an arterial bleed, bright red blood, the oxygenated blood is coming out of that limb. How much oxygenated blood can you lose before your body says, that's it, I'm out? Not very much. If you exceed 40% blood volume loss, you go into this thing that's called irreversible shock, which means your organs start to die. And you say, all right, Paul, that's pretty heavy stuff. Well, I've got a serious point here. If you followed the advice, if someone has an open artery in their arm or their leg, they probably have, if you don't control it and restrict it immediately, they have between 3 to 4 to 5 minutes, depending on the size of the hole in the artery, before they bleed into the point of irreversible shock. That means they're not coming back. And you say, so let's just say take 4 minutes as a median. The person has the injury and their artery is open and they're bleeding before you get to them to render aid, right? So by the time you get to them, they've already been bleeding for how long? I don't know. A minute, 30 seconds, whatever. Then you start doing the half solutions. You do the elevate the wound. You apply the direct pressure. You attempt pressure points. You've done all of that stuff. And now you're 3 minutes in and you realize that none of the half measures that you're applying are working. Now so you make the commitment. You're like, well, I'm going to have to. I'm going to have to do a tourniquet. Well, because tourniquet is your last solution, you don't actually have one on you. Now you're going to look for stuff to make a tourniquet out of. You're going to find a belt or a stick or a belt and a stick or a rope and a stick or a rope and a screwdriver or whatever. By the time you go through all those measures and decide that it's time for a hard solution, that person's been bleeding heavily for 3, 4, 5, 6 minutes. By the time you go through all of those half measures and decide to do a hard measure, a full measure, a tourniquet solution, by the time you do that, it's too late. How often do we do this in our lives, in our business lives, in our personal lives, or professional lives? We have a hard problem. We have a serious problem. And serious problems require serious solutions, tourniquet solutions, immediate solutions. But we hesitate. We try and apply half solutions, half measures, because we're comfortable with half measures, because half measures don't require commitments. They don't require the same commitment that the tourniquet solution requires. However, in our desire to not commit and not apply a hard tourniquet solution, by applying the half measures or the half solutions, we only make the problem worse. We only exacerbate it. Sometimes in life, whether it's your personal life or your professional life or what have you, you have to make a hard choice. You're faced with a major bleed. You're faced with a serious problem, and you can make a choice. You can either apply a serious solution, you can apply the tourniquet solution, or you can do what everybody else does, and you can gravitate towards half measures or half solutions, only to see the problem get worse and worse. It's up to you. Sometimes the tourniquet is the solution. Sometimes we have to make hard choices. I wrote a book. It's called Morning Mindset, a 30-day plan for a more positive and productive life. If you have not picked it up, I suggest that you do so. You can go to Amazon.com and get the paperback, or you can go to Kindle, Amazon/Kindle, and you can get the Kindle version. Or if you would really, really, really like to have an autographed copy of the book, you can go to morningmindsetpodcast.com. And there will be a link right there on the website, and you can order an autographed copy of the book. I am your host, Paul Markel, and I'll talk to you again real soon.
Thank you for spending time with us today. To get show notes, submit a topic request, and for more from your host, Paul G. Markel, visit morningmindsetpodcast.com. That's morningmindsetpodcast.com. podcast.com. Please leave a review for this podcast on your favorite podcast player. We appreciate your time and effort, and we look forward to reading your honest feedback.